Evening falls quietly on the ancient shores of the Mediterranean Sea, where the waves slowly touch the sandy beaches, and a light breeze carries the aromas of southern flowers and sea salt. Long ago, more than 9 centuries ago, Europe was completely different. Cities plunged into darkness in the evenings, and only the soft light of candles illuminated the houses and fortress walls. People lived unhurriedly, following the rhythm of sunrises and sunsets. It was at such a leisurely time that an amazing story began, which connected the West and the East, a story that we now call the Crusades. Imagine how 1,000 years ago, hundreds of people walked along the winding streets of the old French city of Clermont. They gathered to hear the words of a man named Urban, who would later be called Pope Urban II. His voice sounded soft but decisive. He told them about distant lands, sacred places, and about an ancient city known to everyone, Jerusalem. The people listened, closed their eyes, and imagined the golden hills, the streets steeped in history and legend, the ancient temples that were many centuries old. Urban spoke of a world that was lost, of a place where pilgrims once walked freely, where anyone could walk along the ancient streets, touching the ancient stone walls with their hands. These words sank deep into the hearts of the listeners. Sometime later, thousands of people set out on a long journey across Europe, through mountains and forests, across fields and rivers, driven by the dream of reaching that very city surrounded by golden hills. The journey was long and slow, filled with days of travel and nights of rest under the stars. People gathered around fires, quietly talking to each other, watching the dancing flames and listening to the night sounds of the forest. The nights were calm, and their dreams were filled with expectations. But not only ordinary people set out on the journey. Knights joined the campaign, clad in heavy armor that glittered in the rays of the setting sun. The knights walked slowly next to their horses, listening to the soft creaking of the leather of the saddles and the ringing of metal that gently echoed around them. The nights grew warm, the fires crackled, and the voices sounded quieter and softer. People thought about distant lands and dreamed that soon their eyes would see the city that legends spoke of. The campaigns lasted for years, and step by step the caravans moved forward, passing the mountains, crossing wide plains and winding rivers. In some places, people stopped in villages, where the locals smiled at them, offered them shelter and food, told stories about the places they still had to pass through. These stories sounded quietly, like quiet lullabies, lulling travelers, and in the morning, they continued on their way with renewed strength. Little by little, the eastern lands revealed their beauty to them. Unusual fruits, exotic flowers and birds, soft silk fabrics and spices that filled the air with sweet aromas. The nights grew warmer, filled with soft whispers and sounds of the night nature. And finally, after a long journey, the walls of Jerusalem appeared on the horizon. They slowly emerged in the distance, painted with the soft light of the morning sun. People stopped, enchanted by the sight of the ancient city, forgetting about the fatigue of long years of travel. They felt their hearts fill with quiet joy, the feeling that the dream was so close. They entered the city slowly, step by step, as if afraid to disturb the peace of the sacred place, listening to the sound of their steps on ancient stones. Jerusalem accepted them calmly, revealing to them its narrow streets, ancient houses and temples, soaked in history. The pilgrims whispered thanks to fate for the opportunity to touch the shrines. Over the years, other crusades set out, each with its own history, dreams, and hopes. They too crossed mountains and plains, admiring the beauty of the world that opened up before them day after day. And again, nights by the fire, leisurely conversations, the soft crackling of wood, the starry sky under which people fell asleep, dreaming of distant lands and ancient cities. The history of the Crusades is a history of calm and expectation, hopes and dreams, slow movement through amazing lands that revealed their secret beauty to travelers. And while the night gently falls on our homes, we can imagine those distant times when the world was different, when thousands of hearts united by a common dream, falling asleep to the soft sound of history, slowly floating through centuries and oceans of time, dissolving in the warm night to tell their quiet story again and again to those who want to sleep peacefully under the tender words of the past, filled with eternity and peace. The story goes on, slowly and gently, just like your sleep, taking you to a world of peace and tranquility. The history of the Crusades, like a gentle river of time, continues to flow, taking us deeper and deeper into the world of ancient times, where every moment is filled with a quiet wisdom and serenity that is pleasant to remember before sleep. After the first pilgrims saw the holy city of Jerusalem, many decided to stay there, enchanted by the beauty and grandeur of the ancient temples, listening to the quiet prayers and the ringing of bells that softly carried along the streets, creating an atmosphere of peace and tranquility. But with time, the need to set off again arose, and other crusades slowly began their slow march through distant lands and endless spaces, passing ancient cities, olive groves, and wheat fields where the wind gently swayed the golden ears, as if inviting travelers to stop and admire their tranquil beauty. Among the campaigns was the Second Crusade, which brought thousands of people back along the ancient roads of Europe and Asia, with their quiet villages and cozy taverns, where in the evening by the fireplace they told stories and shared dreams, enjoying the warmth and peace that the night gives. Slow caravans moved forward, sometimes stopping to water the horses or just sit by the stream, watching the water flow smoothly among the stones, listening to the gentle singing of birds and the soft rustle of leaves. Time was not in a hurry, and the campaigns lasted for many months and even years. But people did not complain, because along the way they discovered a world filled with amazing landscapes and encounters that gently filled the heart with a feeling of peace and gratitude for the opportunity to see so much beauty. With each new step, they came closer to their goal, guided by hope, and the nights became warmer and calmer, as if nature itself wanted to give them moments of rest and serenity. History also remembers the third expedition, when kings and princes set out along quiet roads, their entourage moving slowly and with dignity, following their leaders over hills and valleys, crossing rivers and stopping in towns where they were greeted with smiles and quiet words of gratitude. In the evenings, melodious songs and stories of exploits and travels sounded around the fires. The voices became quieter and more tender, until only the soft noise of the fire and quiet conversations remained, which gradually turned into quiet dreams. Each expedition left traces behind, quiet memories, stories that were passed down from generation to generation, preserving the aroma of antiquity and peace, so that we can recall them today before going to bed and feel the connection of times smoothly flowing through the centuries. Then came the fourth journey, which turned towards the legendary Constantinople, a city with golden domes and endless gardens where roses opened with the sunrise, filling the air with fragrance, and fountains murmured softly, creating music that made it so easy to fall asleep. The pilgrims admired the splendor of the city, its quiet palaces and gardens, walked along the winding streets, and listened to the whisper of ancient walls that kept the memories of many generations. Again and again, people set off on a journey, each time discovering something new and amazing, as if the stars themselves illuminated their path and showed them the way. Slowly, as if in a dream, the travelers passed through old cities and small villages, stopped by rivers and fields, admiring the soft light of the setting sun and the night sky strewn with stars, each of which kept its own quiet story. And in these stories there is no rush, no fuss, only the smooth passage of time and the soft whisper of the past, like a gentle breeze that gently touches your face, helping you to relax and immerse yourself in a world of dreams, full of peace and pleasant memories of times that once were, and that gently float through the centuries to us, to remind us that life is beautiful in its slowness and softness, and that every moment is an opportunity to feel the endless peace and comfort of the night, in which each story becomes a quiet, lulling story, helping you fall asleep peacefully. The story flows on, softly and calmly, like a quiet river, carrying us through the centuries to other campaigns, which time carefully preserves the memory of, wrapped in warm blankets of legends and soft memories of the past. The subsequent Crusades also went their own leisurely way, opening up new lands to travelers, soft hills and shady forests, where in the evenings it was easy to find shelter, relax by a warm fire, listening to the quiet crunch of logs and the gentle singing of crickets, which sounded like a lullaby of nature. Slow caravans passed through cities, whose residents came out to meet them with a smile and curiosity, offering tired travelers bread and wine and kind words that always sounded quietly and welcoming. The Fifth Crusade carefully touched the shores of Egypt, the country of the ancient pharaohs, where the majestic pyramids gently shone in the rays of the sun, and the waters of the Great Nile slowly flowed through the desert, reflecting the sky and the stars. People looked at this beauty with admiration and calm, immersed in thoughts of eternity and the infinity of time that gently embraces the world and all of us. Then there were other expeditions, the Sixth and Seventh, which continued their leisurely movement along ancient routes, crossing the endless fields and quiet cities of Europe and the Middle East, where the night fell slowly and majestically, like a blanket, wrapping up the cities and villages, filling the streets with peace and serenity. These expeditions were also accompanied by stories, tales passed from father to son, from mother to daughter, quiet words that sounded by fireplaces and fires, softly filling hearts with peace and warmth. People gathered together, listened to each other, and their voices sounded tiredness and satisfaction from the path they had traveled, from the beauty they had seen, and the meetings they had experienced, which remained forever in their memory, like warm memories of distant times. Each expedition became slower and slower, quieter and quieter, as if the world itself asked people to stop and look back, to appreciate the beauty and peace that surround us every moment of life. The Eighth Crusade brought with it the warm winds of Tunisia, sandy shores, and quiet sea sunsets that enchanted travelers, making them forget about everything and simply enjoy the quiet whisper of the waves and the vastness of the sky, painted with the soft colors of the passing day. The Ninth Crusade, which was the last of the Great Crusades, slowly brought its participants to the Holy Lands, where travelers were once again able to touch the ancient walls of Jerusalem, quietly whisper prayers and calmly wander the streets filled with history and peace, which is felt here especially acutely and deeply. Over time, the Crusades began to quietly fade into the past, dissolving into history, leaving behind only soft echoes and memories that were carefully passed down through generations. But even when the era of the Great Crusades ended, people continued to dream of distant lands, of travels filled with amazing discoveries and the soft beauty of the world. This story never quite ends. It simply flows smoothly from one time to another, from one era to another, like a quiet melody sounding through the centuries, soothing and filling the heart with quiet joy and peace. And now, lying in your bed, you can feel this connection with the past. Imagine fires crackling quietly in the night, and caravans slowly moving through the endless expanses. Feel the soft breeze bringing the scent of wild flowers and the rustle of leaves, carrying you away to sleep. Let these soft images continue to float quietly in your mind, gradually dissolving in the darkness of the night, calming and filling you with peace, helping you to plunge into a deep, restful sleep in which you will continue your journey along the quiet roads of time and history. History moves smoothly on, like an endless stream, gently flowing through the centuries, allowing everyone to feel deep peace and tranquility, immersing themselves in memories of the distant past, where every evening was filled with quiet conversations and leisurely steps along ancient roads. And although the great campaigns ended, their soft traces remained forever, quietly and tenderly preserved in the hearts of people. Remembering those distant times, you can imagine yourself on the seashore, where the waves slowly run onto the sand, gently carrying away any worries and filling the soul with peace and quiet. Over time, Europe changed. Cities began to slowly grow. New buildings, churches, and castles appeared, but the spirit of those ancient campaigns still lived in the memory of generations, preserved in quiet legends and soft tales passed around the fireplaces on long winter evenings. People recalled stories of their ancestors' travels, slowly telling their children about how long ago the world opened up to travelers, giving them the beauty of distant lands and quiet nights under the starry sky. In these stories there were knights, calmly walking in shining armor, and ordinary people who slowly walked along the roads, admiring the beauty of nature, slowly changing from village to village, from hill to valley. Their voices sounded softly, and their words were full of dreams about the amazing places they had seen, about about those nights when the stars softly illuminated their path, filling their hearts with peace and hope. And now the Crusades became nothing more than quiet echoes of the past, but they never disappeared completely. Instead, they turned into legends that were carefully preserved in old books and in people's memories, in quiet conversations and slow walks through ancient cities whose walls still remember the steps of those who once set out on a journey. Imagine an ancient city immersed in twilight, where lanterns burn quietly and windows of houses shine softly. People walk quietly along the streets, remembering stories that have been passed down to them from generation to generation. Every stone here holds a memory, every tree rustles softly, reminding of the times when thousands of hearts united in a common dream of distant sacred lands. Now, when the night gently embraces you with its warm arms, you can allow yourself to immerse yourself in the soft memories of those times, feeling how your breathing slows down and your body relaxes, filling with peace and warmth. And let the slow passage of time, like a gentle breeze, quietly carry you into the world of dreams, where you can travel along the quiet roads of history, admiring the beauty of endless fields, listening to the whisper of the waves and the gentle rustle of leaves. History continues to flow softly further, like a calm river, passing through cities and villages, touching ancient walls and castles that silently keep memories of past centuries. Over time, legends about the Crusades began to intertwine with the everyday life of people, turning into quiet stories that sounded during family dinners and in quiet conversations by the fireplace. The years passed, and the cities themselves, having survived those times, became places of pilgrimage, where people could leisurely wander along narrow streets, feeling like a part of history that had passed here unnoticed many centuries ago. Travelers came to see ancient stones and feel the atmosphere of calm and solemnity, forever left by past generations. Castles that once served as protection for the Crusaders were slowly covered with ivy, gently twining around the ancient walls, and became part of a quiet landscape, immersed in eternal peace and tranquility. Time continued to gently touch these places, as if leaving an imprint of eternity on them, which can be felt even now. Ancient cities that survived the era of campaigns were filled with a measured life, unhurried movement, and comfort, allowing you to feel the full depth of history. Every stone and every window of these houses remember how many centuries ago travelers walked along these roads, tired but full of hope, slowly moving towards their distant goal. Quiet evenings in these cities and villages passed peacefully. People gathered together, shared stories that sounded unhurried and thoughtful, reminding of the past and giving the opportunity to imagine those amazing times. In the evenings, lanterns were lit, their soft light gently illuminating the cobbled streets. And in this warm light, antiquity came to life, allowing everyone to feel their connection with past generations. Gradually, the Crusades were remembered differently, not as wars, but as great journeys that opened up the beauty of distant lands, majestic mountains and seas, cities full of unusual sounds and aromas, and breathtaking landscapes. People understood that these campaigns were not only battles and conquests, but also an opportunity to discover an amazing new world. And now, recalling these times, one can imagine how softly the steps of pilgrims sounded along the old roads, how quietly the fires burned at the overnight stops, and how slowly the caravans moved, filled with the hopes and dreams of people who wanted to know the world around them. The Crusades left not only traces on the earth, but also traces in memory, quietly and carefully preserved in legends, stories, and memories. They have become part of the common memory of mankind, helping us to realize that every journey, no matter how long and difficult it may be, opens up new horizons and gives us unforgettable impressions that remain in our hearts for centuries. As we continue to move through time, we can feel how these memories gently touch us, immersing us in the atmosphere of ancient travels and discoveries, in the atmosphere of eternity in which the past gently touches the present, creating a beautiful mosaic of human history. History continues to flow slowly and measuredly through the centuries, gently opening new pages of ancient times before us, where memories of the Crusades are quietly reflected in the mirror of history. Gradually, life in Europe changed. Cities began to flourish. The streets were filled with the sounds of shops and workshops, and in the evenings, townspeople gathered in their homes, leisurely talking about the affairs of the day and recalling stories passed down from generation to generation. The Crusades gradually turned into legends, into stories that were told to children and grandchildren, softly and thoughtfully, as if giving them the opportunity to touch the past and feel its grandeur and tranquility. Over time, pilgrims began to set out again, but now not for the sake of conquest, but to see with their own eyes the ancient shrines and feel the atmosphere of antiquity and tranquility that reigned in the ancient streets and squares. They walked leisurely through towns and villages, stopping in cozy taverns where they could calmly rest, taste bread and wine, and share stories that sounded quiet and soulful, permeated with warmth and memories. The cities themselves changed, their streets filled with new houses and buildings, but the ancient walls and castles still reminded of those distant times when thousands of people set out on a journey, led by dreams and hopes. These ancient places quietly attracted travelers who wanted to feel the breath of history and imagine those days when the world seemed endless, and every road led to amazing discoveries and unforgettable impressions. In the evenings, lights were lit in ancient cities, softly illuminating the streets and creating an atmosphere of peace and tranquility. People walked slowly, admiring the beauty of houses, churches, and squares, feeling like part of the endless flow of time that calmly moves forward, connecting generations and eras. Castles and fortresses, once formidable and severe, now looked peaceful and tranquil, shrouded in fog and entwined with ivy, as if they themselves were resting after long years of history, filled with events and memories. Time carefully touched these places, preserving imprints of the past in them and allowing us to imagine how slowly and measuredly life moved in those distant eras. People who lived then were not in a hurry. They knew the value of every moment, enjoyed the simple joys of life, and were able to see beauty in the little things. In the morning sunrises, evening sunsets, in the rustling of leaves and the whisper of the wind that gently touched their faces. Each city, each village kept its history, its legends and memories that sounded quietly, like a quiet melody playing in the hearts of people. And with each new generation, these memories only became richer and deeper, filled with new meaning and new colors. People carefully passed them on, maintaining a connection with the past and feeling themselves part of a huge, beautiful, and infinitely diverse world in which each era left its mark, quiet and imperceptible, but important and valuable. And this history continues to slowly move forward, opening new horizons, new dreams and hopes that become part of the common memory, preserving the warmth, wisdom, and tranquility of past centuries. History continues to slowly unfold, like an ancient book, the pages of which turn slowly, carefully revealing to us the times of long-gone years. The cities of Europe, having survived the era of the Crusades, gradually filled with new life, became centers of culture and trade, places where roads and destinies of people from different corners of the earth smoothly intersected. In the evenings, the narrow streets of old cities slowly filled with the soft light of candles and lanterns, illuminating the cobblestone pavements and stone walls of houses that had absorbed the memories of centuries. Quiet laughter and leisurely conversations of families gathered together to discuss the past day and share dreams of the future were heard outside the windows of cozy houses. Each generation added something of its own to the common history, slowly and carefully preserving the legacy of the past and passing it on to the future. In the evenings, travelers and locals gathered in taverns and inns, where quiet melodies and stories of travels and adventures, of distant lands and ancient cities that had once witnessed great events were heard. These stories sounded soft and thoughtful. They warmed the hearts of listeners, helped to feel a connection with generations that had long since passed into the past, but left a quiet trace in memory. Gradually, the Crusades began to be perceived not only as wars and campaigns for faith, but also as an era that opened up many beautiful lands to people. Bright and unforgettable encounters with other cultures, traditions, and languages. Europe began to change under the influence of these travels, filling with new knowledge, tastes, and aromas, which slowly and imperceptibly became part of everyday life, gently enriching it and adding shades of distant lands and previously unknown impressions. People gradually got used to the spices and exotic fruits, to the silk fabrics and fine patterns that were brought from the East. These new things became part of their lives, added variety and beauty to them, reminded them of distant lands and unusual adventures that their ancestors had once experienced. Markets and squares appeared all over Europe, where trade proceeded slowly and steadily, where people gathered to buy or sell goods, talk about the news, share impressions of travels, and learn something new about distant lands that once seemed unattainable and mysterious to them. Times changed, but the memory of the Crusades continued to live in legends and stories, in ancient texts and chronicles that were carefully preserved in monasteries and libraries, like precious treasures. Scholars and writers turned to these sources, studying and writing about the era of the Crusades, slowly immersing themselves in a world of the past, filled with romance, hardships, and unusual encounters that changed the world forever. People began to travel around their own countries, discovering the beauty of cities and nature, admiring the grandeur of the mountains, the quiet beauty of rivers and lakes, golden fields and shady forests, where one could feel peace and unity with the world around them. These journeys were also inspired by the legacy of the Crusades, reminding people that the world is large and diverse, and every road, every path can lead to new discoveries and impressions. Over time, memories of the campaigns began to be gently woven into art and culture. Artists painted pictures of knights and pilgrims, composers created music that sounded like quiet echoes of the past, writers wrote books filled with stories of long journeys, exploits and adventures that slowly immersed readers in the atmosphere of those ancient times. These works of art and culture became part of the common heritage of humanity, carefully preserved and passed on from one generation to another, helping people feel their connection with the past and understand how important it is to remember and respect the history that lives imperceptibly in each of us. In every city and village, in every house and every street where people once walked, led by their dreams and hopes, their joys and sorrows. And as the era of the Crusades moved away, the memory of it became quieter and softer, turning into a calm story that sounds in the hearts of people, filling their souls with warmth and gratitude for the opportunity to touch eternity and feel its beauty and grandeur. Time continued its leisurely course, and the memories of the Crusades softly dissolved in everyday life, becoming an unnoticeable but important part of human memory. The cities of Europe gradually filled with new energy. The streets became livelier. People walked with pleasure through the squares and parks, enjoying quiet evenings and leisurely conversations. The air was filled with the aromas of fresh bread, coffee, and flowers brought from distant lands that were once discovered by travelers. Ancient castles and fortresses eventually turned into museums and monuments, where anyone could touch history, feel the spirit of past times, and imagine the lives of those who once went on long campaigns and wanderings. Pilgrims and travelers continued to visit sacred places, quietly strolling through the old streets, listening to the ringing of bells and the whisper of ancient walls that softly told the stories of past generations. The history of the Crusades became part of a common cultural heritage that was carefully preserved and passed down through the centuries. People began to value the peace and quiet of life more and more, finding beauty in small and simple things. In the evenings, cities were filled with soft light. People went for walks, enjoying the warm air and the quiet rustle of trees that seemed to be eternal witnesses of time. Slowly, year after year, Europe became a place where the past carefully touched the present, creating an atmosphere of deep respect for history and culture. In every city, one could find monuments and statues that reminded people of those who once went on long campaigns, led by dreams and hopes. These monuments gently and unobtrusively reminded people of bygone times, of the exploits and difficulties that their ancestors went through. Art continued to be inspired by the Crusades, creating paintings, sculptures, and works that reflected the events of the past, filled with romance and adventure. Poets wrote poems, filled with soft and tender images that evoked feelings of travel and discovery in the hearts of listeners. These works conveyed a subtle thread connecting generations and eras, allowing everyone to feel part of a large and diverse world. people gradually learned to see the beauty of the past, not only in heroic deeds, but also in the quiet moments of life, in the calm of evenings and leisurely walks along ancient streets, where every stone and every house breathed history. They learned to appreciate the slow flow of time, enjoying every moment, understanding that it is in such moments that the true wealth of life lies. Travel continued to inspire people, and they set out to see with their own eyes the places they had heard about in stories and legends. They walked slowly along old roads, stopping in villages where they could enjoy the peace and hospitality of locals, ready to share their stories and memories. Each such journey became a small story, filled with pleasant moments, discoveries, and impressions that remained in the memory for a long time. These trips help people better understand and accept their past, feel a connection with those who lived long before them, and realize how closely the destinies and paths of different generations are intertwined. Slowly, step by step, the history of the Crusades turned into a common heritage of mankind, filled with wisdom and tranquility, allowing everyone to feel part of something bigger and more significant. People continued to share memories, passing them on from generation to generation, gently and carefully preserving them in their hearts. These quiet stories became an important reminder that history never ends, but only gently passes from one era to another, connecting us with the past and giving us the opportunity to feel its deep and unique beauty. History continues to slowly unfold, like the calm flow of an endless river, tirelessly moving forward, intertwining centuries, destinies, and memories. The Crusades are long gone, but their echoes are still alive, softly reflected in culture, architecture, and the minds of people, reminding us of a time when the world seemed vast and unknown. Gradually, people began to look at these epochal events in a new way, finding in them not only lessons from the past, but also inspiration for the future. Cities and villages that were once the starting point for great journeys have become quiet keepers of historical memory. Their streets and squares are still calm, and the walls of ancient buildings whisper stories of those days when thousands of people set off on a long journey to distant shores and foreign lands. Monasteries and libraries carefully preserve ancient texts and manuscripts, allowing everyone to touch the past, feel its breath, and understand how deeply it has penetrated our lives. Over time, interest in the Crusades has spread beyond Europe, becoming a subject of study all over the world. Scientists slowly and thoughtfully studied these events, discovering new details and nuances, helping people see the full picture of those times, filled not only with battles and victories, but also with simple human stories, told quietly but sincerely and warmly. People began to increasingly value and preserve the memory of the past, respectfully treating the places that witnessed historical events. Old roads, once filled with travelers, became routes for new pilgrims, who now in peacetime set off on a journey to feel the spirit of the past and feel the unique atmosphere that ancient walls and quiet streets keep. Life flowed softly and slowly, and memories of the Crusades became an integral part of the cultural heritage that people carefully passed on to each other. They recalled legends and stories, discussed events, trying to understand and accept the lessons that history taught them. Cities were filled with museums and exhibitions displaying artifacts from those times, ancient armor, weapons, jewelry, and everyday objects that slowly and imperceptibly told the story of the lives of people of the past, helping visitors to feel respect and admiration for those who lived and dreamed long before us. Gradually, the memory of the Crusades entered everyday life, becoming part of the general history of mankind. People began to look at the past not just as a chain of events, but as a source of inspiration and wisdom that helped them live and move forward. In the evenings, when twilight slowly fell on cities and villages, people went out into the streets, enjoying the soft light of lanterns, leisurely chatting and remembering the times when the roads were long, the nights were starry, and the world seemed endless and full of possibilities. The history of the Crusades has now become a quiet, gentle thread connecting generations, reminding us that the past lives within us, that each step we take forward carries an echo of those distant days when people dreamed of new lands and unfamiliar cities. Time continued its leisurely pace, and the history of the Crusades became a soft, calm story that resounds in the hearts of people, which never ends, but only smoothly flows from one era to another, uniting humanity in a single stream of time. History, like a calm and majestic river, continues to slowly flow forward, gently touching the banks of eras and events, leaving behind quiet memories and warm impressions. The Crusades, which once began as great expeditions and heroic adventures, have now become a quiet part of the common memory of humanity, which is carefully preserved and passed on from one generation to another. With each passing decade, people increasingly realize the significance of those times when thousands of travelers, driven by hopes and dreams, set off for distant and unknown lands, discovering amazing and beautiful worlds. Gradually, legends about those expeditions began to merge with everyday life, turning into quiet stories that people shared with each other on long winter evenings by the fireplace or on warm summer nights when the sky was strewn with stars. Monks in quiet monasteries continued to carefully preserve ancient texts, slowly rewriting them and passing them on so that the memory of those times would be preserved as long as possible. Over time, cities that were once starting points for great journeys became centers of pilgrimage, where people came to see ancient streets and squares, to feel the atmosphere of those distant times when the world seemed vast and full of unknown lands and opportunities. Every stone, every corner of these cities was filled with memories and the quiet wisdom of generations who had walked these roads long before us. Art continued to be inspired by the memories of the Crusades, creating works that reminded people of the exploits, journeys, and encounters that left a deep mark on history. Paintings, books, and music conveyed the mood and spirit of that time, immersing people in an atmosphere of romance and adventure, softly and thoughtfully telling about those days when every journey was a whole life, filled with discoveries and unexpected encounters. Over the years, the Crusades became more and more symbolic, and people saw them not only as historical events, but also as a reflection of the human desire for discoveries, dreams, and new horizons. They reminded us of the importance of carefully preserving our history, remembering the past in order to better understand the present and confidently look to the future. The cities of Europe became more and more comfortable and beautiful, and ancient buildings and castles gently reminded us of the times of the Crusades, of the people who once lived here, loved, dreamed, and went to distant lands in search of their destiny and new knowledge. Every street, every square kept the quiet memories of those who walked along it many centuries ago, leaving behind only a light and imperceptible trace, which was carefully preserved by subsequent generations. People learned to value and cherish this heritage, treating the past with respect and awe, understanding that it is part of their own history and culture. They understood that the memory of those times helps them feel their connection with the world and the history of mankind, giving the opportunity to feel part of something bigger, significant, and eternal. The Crusades became a symbol of the endless human desire to move forward, to new knowledge, to understanding, and to discover the unknown. They reminded people that the world has always been and will be filled with amazing and wonderful opportunities, and each person setting off on a journey is able to change their life and the world around them, leaving behind a quiet and important trace in history. Time moved on, but the soft and calm memories of the Crusades continued to live, flowing smoothly from century to century, gently reminding people of the importance of the past and the beauty of the future, which is always open to new dreams and new roads. History continued to unfold before us softly and slowly, like an ancient scroll, revealing its secrets gradually and carefully, page after page. Memories of the Crusades remained part of the cultural heritage, which was passed down from generation to generation with special care and respect. People began to perceive these distant events no longer as something alien and distant, but as part of their own history, an important stage that shaped the world and themselves. Ancient cities and fortresses that witnessed those epochal events continued to attract travelers who leisurely wandered along the ancient streets, admiring the ancient buildings, gardens, and squares. The soft light of the setting sun gently illuminated the stone walls covered with ivy, And in this light, it seemed as if the past was coming to life before our eyes, becoming closer and more understandable to anyone who wanted to immerse themselves in its atmosphere. Archives and museums opened up amazing treasures of the past to people. Old maps, diaries, manuscripts, and things that once belonged to participants in the Crusades. These artifacts slowly revealed their stories, allowing museum visitors to feel closer to distant times, to feel the breath of the eras, and to touch the memory of those who lived long before us. People began to think more often about the fact that the Crusades were not only wars and battles, but also complex, multifaceted events, full of human emotions, hopes, disappointments, and discoveries. They saw in them a reflection of the eternal struggle of man for his dreams, the desire to overcome the boundaries of the known world and look beyond the horizon, discovering the unknown. Art continued to be inspired by these memories, creating new works that told of those times with the softness and depth characteristic of the great masters. Paintings, poems, musical compositions, novels, and plays brought the era of the Crusades to life, reminding people how closely destinies, events, and eras were intertwined, creating a single fabric of human history. Gradually, the Crusades became part of universal human memory, a quiet and calm story that continues to live in each generation, passed on further and further, uniting people of different cultures and nations. Pilgrims and travelers still set off for distant lands, but no longer with a sword, but with a book and a map, seeking to learn about and understand the world around them, to feel a connection with those who lived and traveled here many centuries ago. Over time, the roads that crusaders and pilgrims once walked became peaceful paths along which people moved, thirsty for knowledge and discovery. These paths led them through mountains and plains, through ancient cities and quiet villages, revealing amazing landscapes and stories that became part of their own experience and memory. The cities that once met and saw off caravans of travelers became centers of attraction for people from all over the world, where everyone could touch history, feel its breath, and feel their connection with those who walked these streets long before us. Each such city was like an open book, full of memories and stories about the life, dreams, joys, and sorrows of many generations. The Crusades became part of the cultural and historical memory of mankind, gently and unobtrusively reminding us of the importance of careful treatment of the past. People realized that in every era, in every event, there is something important and valuable, capable of teaching us wisdom, patience, and understanding of other cultures and traditions. Over time, these lessons became part of everyday life, helping people better understand each other and the world around them, making it warmer, cozier, and more hospitable. The history of the Crusades continued to live among us calmly and unhurriedly, gently uniting times and generations, connecting us with the past and opening new horizons for the future, reminding everyone of the importance of appreciating and cherishing their history and culture. The history of the Crusades gradually became a quiet and wise companion that continued to slowly move along the roads of time, leaving behind barely noticeable but important traces. In each generation, there were people who wanted to touch this amazing and distant past again, traveling to places associated with the era of the Crusades, slowly immersing themselves in the atmosphere of antiquity and peace. Historians and scientists continued to study these events, revealing new details and nuances, filling our understanding of the past with ever greater depth and meaning. They opened archives, studied ancient manuscripts and maps, carefully and tenderly deciphering evidence of those distant times when the world seemed boundless and unknown. Thanks to their work, a picture of life in medieval Europe, its culture and traditions, as well as the influence of the Crusades on world history and the development of civilizations, slowly and unhurriedly unfolded before people. Ancient cities, fortresses, and monasteries continued to stand in their places, reminding us of the times when thousands of people set off on long journeys, driven by their dreams and hopes. Time carefully and gently touched these ancient places, leaving traces of past centuries on their walls, streets, and squares, which can be seen and felt while walking through them today. In the cities that witnessed the era of the Crusades, life continued to be measured, filled with leisurely walks along old streets, visits to cozy cafes and taverns where you could talk about life, share news, or just relax, admiring the quiet flow of time around you. Every evening in such cities was filled with an atmosphere of peace and tranquility, and people enjoyed the simple joys of life: good food, good conversation, and the beauty of ancient buildings and squares that were witnesses to historical events. Art continued to be inspired by the legacy of the Crusades, conveying the spirit of that era, its moods and experiences through paintings, music, and literature. People enjoyed visiting museums and galleries where they could feel the touch of history and feel their connection with past generations. Works of art became a kind of guide to the world of the past, allowing each person to discover something important and significant. Travelers continued to visit places associated with the Crusades, going on quiet and peaceful trips that helped them feel a connection with past eras and understand how closely the destinies of people and the histories of different nations are intertwined. On such trips, people slowly and unhurriedly got acquainted with the life of different countries and cultures, expanding their horizons and filling their lives with new impressions and knowledge. Gradually, the Crusades became a quiet and respectful reminder of the importance of maintaining peace and understanding each other, appreciating the diversity and uniqueness of cultures and traditions. People began to realize that the past can be not only a lesson, but also a source of inspiration, gently encouraging them to move forward, discovering new horizons and opportunities. Time moved on, and the story of the Crusades was gently and carefully passed down from generation to generation, becoming a quiet legend that unites people, helping them feel part of the great and amazing history of mankind. History continued to move forward slowly, like a soft and quiet river flowing gently, carrying memories of distant times, wrapping them in warmth and peace. The era of the Crusades, once stormy and vibrant, had now become a quiet, cozy memory that gently touched the hearts of people, reminding them of the importance of peace, tolerance, and mutual understanding between different cultures and peoples. With each new generation, people found more wisdom and beauty in these distant events, discovering new facets of the past that helped them to understand the present more deeply. In the evenings, in the ancient cities of Europe, people continued to gather together to leisurely discuss the affairs of the day and share memories of their travels and discoveries. The old stone streets softly reflected the light of the evening lanterns, creating an atmosphere of comfort and tranquility. Quiet conversations, laughter, and music sounded outside the windows of houses, and in this simple everyday life one could feel a quiet echo of those distant times, when people walked along these streets, led by their dreams and hopes, setting off on a journey to unknown lands. The history of the Crusades gradually moved from the realm of great events and battles to the realm of everyday culture and people's consciousness, becoming part of the common cultural heritage. In museums and libraries, people enjoyed studying old books, maps, and objects related to the era of the campaigns, slowly immersing themselves in the atmosphere of those times and discovering their deep meaning and significance. Scientists and historians continued to slowly explore the past, restoring details and nuances that allowed us to better understand the lives and experiences of people who lived many centuries ago. They opened up new facets of the era of the Crusades for us, helping us to feel it not only as an important historical event, but also as part of a living and infinitely diverse human history. In every ancient city in Europe, you could feel the quiet breath of the past, walking along narrow streets, looking at old houses and castles, visiting ancient temples and monasteries that carefully preserved the memory of those times. People enjoyed traveling to these places, discovering the world of the past and enjoying the quiet beauty of ancient buildings and landscapes filled with peace and tranquility. The Crusades continued to inspire people to create, becoming a subject for creating works of art that reflected the deep emotions, dreams, and hopes of the past. Artists painted pictures that softly and thoughtfully conveyed the atmosphere of those times. Composers created music full of quiet and majestic melodies. Writers wrote novels and stories that allowed readers to immerse themselves in the world of distant eras and feel their beauty and wisdom. People realized that the past is not only a source of knowledge, but also a gentle reminder of the need to preserve and protect the world, respect and understand each other, finding in this a deep and important meaning in life. The Crusades became a symbol of the fact that people will always strive for new discoveries, overcome borders and difficulties, seek and find a common language with each other, despite differences and distances. Over time, these ideas gently and carefully entered everyday life, becoming part of the common wisdom of humanity, helping people create a world filled with mutual understanding and harmony, where everyone could feel part of something bigger and more important. Time continued its quiet and unhurried course, and the history of the Crusades remained a soft and important reminder that every person setting out on a journey is able to change their life and the world around them, leaving behind a quiet but important mark in history that will forever remain in the hearts of future generations. The history of the Crusades continued to flow smoothly and gently through the centuries, gradually acquiring a shade of calm reflection and respect for the past. People increasingly thought about the fact that behind the bright and dramatic events of these distant times, simple human destinies, filled with dreams, hopes, and experiences, were hidden. Travelers and explorers were happy to go to places that had once witnessed great events, to experience the atmosphere of antiquity and tranquility, to immerse themselves in a world full of stories and legends. They walked slowly and leisurely along ancient streets, touching ancient walls, visiting monasteries and castles, feeling how time gently and carefully preserves the memory of the people who once lived here. Cities associated with the Crusades gradually became centers of attraction for those who sought inspiration, wisdom, and understanding of the past. Tourists and pilgrims came here to enjoy the atmosphere of ancient streets and squares, to listen to the quiet whisper of the past, carefully preserved in stones and walls. Each such city was filled with a soft and leisurely flow of time, allowing people to feel the connection between generations and eras, to feel like part of the endless flow of history. Art continued to draw inspiration from the memories of the Crusades, reflecting their atmosphere in its works. Paintings, music, and literature gently told people about the times when the world was different, full of adventure and uncertainty. Works of art allowed each person to touch the spirit of the era, to feel the emotions of those who once set out on a journey, and to find in this inspiration for their own thoughts and dreams. Over time, the Crusades became an important part of the common cultural heritage of humanity, gently uniting people from different countries and cultures. People began to see them not only as historical events, but also as deep human stories filled with wisdom and experience that helped them better understand themselves and the world around them. Every evening, when the lanterns were lit on the streets of the cities, people gathered together to leisurely discuss the past and the present, share impressions and thoughts, feeling themselves part of a single stream of human history. Scientists and historians continued to slowly explore the era of the Crusades, discovering new facts and details that gradually complemented the picture of the past, making it more complete and vivid. Their works help people see history not just as a series of events, but as a living and multifaceted reality, full of human destinies and experiences. Ancient texts, manuscripts, and diaries were carefully stored in libraries and archives, allowing everyone to touch the world of the past and feel its atmosphere. People began to understand that history is not just the past, but a part of their own lives, which gently and imperceptibly influences their worldview, thoughts, and actions. The Crusades continued to live in the memory of generations, reminding them of the need to strive for mutual understanding, tolerance, and respect for each other. They became a symbol of the importance of maintaining peace and good neighborly relations, carefully and gently treating the traditions and culture of other peoples. People began to see the Crusades as a quiet reminder that the world had always been and would always be filled with diversity and amazing possibilities that could only be discovered if we moved forward with respect and an open heart. As time passed, memories of the Crusades were gently and carefully passed down from generation to generation, helping people feel part of the amazing and infinitely varied history of humanity. The First Crusade began many centuries ago, at a time when the world seemed endless and travels could last for years. Imagine medieval Europe, where people gathered in the squares of ancient cities, listening attentively to the stories of travelers and preachers who spoke of distant holy lands, of mysterious Jerusalem, full of ancient temples and shrines. It was in such a quiet and thoughtful atmosphere at the end of the 11th century that Pope Urban II called on people to set out to liberate the sacred lands. His voice sounded confident but soft, inspiring the hearts of people and awakening in them dreams of travel, exploits, and adventures. Thousands of people, hearing this call, set off on a long journey, slowly and carefully preparing for the campaign. Knights collected armor and weapons, ordinary people prepared provisions and necessary supplies for the journey. Their eyes shone with hope and expectation, and their hearts were full of determination to reach the distant shrines that they spoke of with such love and trepidation. The path that these first crusaders set out on was long and difficult, but at the same time filled with amazing discoveries and meetings. People moved slowly, sometimes stopping to rest and enjoy the beauty of the world around them. They passed through green meadows and forests, admired majestic mountains and quiet valleys, crossed rivers and lakes that softly reflected the sky and clouds. In the evenings, the crusaders stopped for the night, made fires around which quiet conversations and soft melodies could be heard. People told each other stories about their lives, dreamed about the future, and discussed the lands that they had yet to see. Every evening was filled with an atmosphere of peace and tranquility, despite the difficulties and fatigue of a long journey. Gradually, the caravans of travelers reached the cities of the East, where they were greeted by new smells, bright colors of the markets, and objects unusual for Europeans. People looked at exotic fabrics, spices, fruits, and jewelry with surprise and delight, enjoying trying new dishes and getting to know other cultures. The journey of the First Crusade gradually became not just a military campaign, but also a unique cultural exchange, opening up a completely new world for the participants. Gently and gradually, moving further and further to the east, the Crusaders approached the cherished goal, Jerusalem. This city had attracted pilgrims from all over the world for many centuries, with its atmosphere of antiquity and holiness, and now the Crusaders felt that they were getting closer to the realization of their dream. They walked slowly and respectfully, as if understanding the full significance of the moment when they first saw the walls of the holy city. Finally, after a long and difficult journey, Jerusalem appeared on the horizon. The people stopped, overcome with deep emotion and quiet joy, seeing the ancient walls and golden domes glittering in the sun. They knew that they had reached their goal, that their long journey and efforts had not been in vain. The first Crusaders entered the city with reverence and respect, feeling that one journey was ending here and another, spiritual and inner, was beginning. Each of them quietly and gratefully touched the walls of the shrines, walked along the ancient streets, and prayed in the temples, feeling a deep connection with history, with the generations of pilgrims who had come here before them. Gradually, the Crusaders began to arrange life in the new lands, build fortresses and castles, churches and houses, filling these places with the atmosphere of their presence and respect for antiquity. The First Crusade became not only an important historical event, but also a symbol of the human desire for dreams, discoveries, and new opportunities that gently and carefully continue to inspire people for many centuries. The Second Crusade began almost half a century after the end of the First, in an era when memories of the past had become soft legends, stories quietly passed from mouth to mouth. By this time, the sacred lands were again in need of support and aid, and calls were once again heard throughout Europe to set out to defend and strengthen what had been conquered by their ancestors. This time, people set out with a deep understanding of how long and difficult their journey might be, but also with hope and faith filling their hearts. In the ancient cities of Europe, they again began to slowly and carefully prepare for the campaign, collecting weapons, food, and the necessary supplies. The people who decided to set out knew that distant lands and long roads lay ahead, but they were ready to go, feeling that they were part of an important and meaningful cause. The Second Crusade was marked by the participation of European kings and noble knights, among whom were famous and respected figures of their time. These leaders set out with dignity and calm, followed by numerous caravans of common people, pilgrims, and warriors. The journey was slow and careful, passing through quiet European villages and towns, where the inhabitants came out to greet the travelers with curiosity and respect, offering them help and rest. In the evenings, the Crusaders gathered again around the fires, telling each other of their dreams and hopes, remembering home and loved ones far beyond the horizon. Along the way, they encountered a wide variety of landscapes and cities, slowly and unhurriedly becoming acquainted with foreign cultures and traditions. The travelers passed through mountain passes and wide plains, crossed quiet and mighty rivers, admiring the beauty of nature and feeling its calm and grandeur. Their road was filled not only with trials and difficulties, but also with moments of quiet joy when they could enjoy rest and the beauty of the surrounding world. Finally, the caravans of the Second Crusade reached the lands of the East, where they were again greeted by vibrant markets and bustling cities filled with unusual aromas, tastes, and colors. People explored the new life with respect and curiosity, tried unfamiliar foods, and listened to the quiet and thoughtful stories of the locals, discovering the wisdom and diversity of Eastern culture. This journey was more difficult than the first. The travelers faced great difficulties and trials, but their hearts remained full of determination and hope. They realized the importance of their journey and continued to move forward, step by step, getting closer to their goal. Although the Second Crusade did not achieve all of its goals and was more difficult than expected, it helped to strengthen the cultural and economic ties between the East and the West, opening up new opportunities for the exchange of knowledge and experience. The participants of this journey returned home with new impressions, memories, and an awareness of how diverse and amazing the world around them was. The Second Crusade became an important part of the general history of mankind, gently reminding people that every journey, every encounter with something new and unknown is an opportunity to better understand themselves and the world around them, to find common ground and inspiration for further discoveries. These memories continued to be quietly and carefully passed on from generation to generation, filling people's hearts with wisdom and respect for history. The Third Crusade began at the end of the 12th century, at a time when people again felt that distant, sacred lands needed their help and attention. Europe quietly and carefully responded to the call to protect and return those places that were so dear to the hearts of many people. This time, the most influential kings of their time joined the crusade. Frederick Barbarossa, Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, English King Richard the Lionheart, and French monarch Philip II Augustus. These great rulers, driven by a common goal, gathered on the road to slowly and surely move towards the eastern lands, feeling responsible for the fates of thousands of people who set off on the journey with them. Preparations for the Third Crusade were carried out with particular care and calm, understanding the importance of the mission and the seriousness of the journey. The knights leisurely prepared their armor and weapons, the common people stocked up on food and necessary supplies, slowly gathering in caravans, which soon set off on a long journey to the east. Their path ran along familiar roads of Europe, through quiet towns and villages, whose inhabitants greeted the travelers with respect, offering them rest and good wishes for the journey. In the evenings, the Crusaders again gathered around the fires, where quiet stories and reflections were heard about what awaited them ahead. The caravans moved slowly, carefully crossing mountain passes, plains and forests, carefully and curiously meeting new lands and people. Soon the paths of the kings diverged, and each went his own way to the eastern lands. Emperor Frederick Barbarossa led his people overland, through mountains and rivers, slowly moving towards their goal. His campaign was difficult, full of trials and surprises, but he continued to move forward, inspiring people around him with his calm and confidence. The kings of England and France chose the sea route, setting off on a long journey on ships gently rocking on the waves of the Mediterranean. Their journey was filled with the measured rhythm of the sea, quiet conversations on the decks, and watching the endless horizon, gradually bringing them closer to the eastern shores. Arriving in the east, the Crusaders encountered a powerful rival, Sultan Saladin, a wise and respected leader with whom they had to conduct long and difficult negotiations. Despite the confrontation, both sides treated each other with respect, understanding the importance and seriousness of the situation. King Richard the Lionheart became a key figure in the campaign, known for his courage, bravery, and determination. His fame spread throughout the East and the West, and even his opponents treated him with deep respect and recognition. His image gradually became a legend, gently and carefully preserved in the memory of generations. Although the Third Crusade did not end in complete success and did not fully regain control of Jerusalem, it ended with an important agreement allowing pilgrims to freely visit the holy places. This result gently reminded the world of the possibility of dialogue and respect for each other, despite differences and confrontations. Gradually, the Crusaders began to return home, carrying with them memories of great journeys, vivid encounters, and important discoveries. They realized that the world is diverse and full of amazing people, cultures, and traditions, and that the most important thing is respect and understanding of each other. The Third Crusade has gone down in history as a gentle reminder that even in the most difficult of times, people can find common ground and maintain human dignity by respecting each other's wisdom and culture. These lessons continue to be passed down from generation to generation, quietly and carefully preserved in the hearts and minds of men. The Fourth Crusade began in the early 13th century, a few years after the Third Crusade ended, in an era when memories of previous crusades had become the stuff of legend and gentle, unhurried tales. This time, Europeans once again felt the call to set out to fortify and protect distant, sacred lands that were dear to their hearts. The Crusader caravans began to gather once more, slowly and quietly preparing for the journey ahead. But this crusade was special. From the very beginning, it took on a different character, and the Crusaders' plans gradually began to change. Instead of heading straight to Jerusalem, they decided to travel by sea, stopping in Venice, a famous city where the streets were gently intertwined with canals, and the evening air was filled with the smell of the sea and freshly baked goods. In Venice, the Crusaders met with merchants and ship captains to negotiate the transportation of their troops across the Mediterranean. But it soon became clear that the journey would cost much more than expected, and the Crusaders were faced with the question of how to continue their journey. The city leaders of Venice offered the travelers an unusual solution: to help the Venetians in their struggle for influence and power in neighboring lands before moving on. The Crusaders agreed, and their path unexpectedly led them to the ancient and majestic city of Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, a place with a rich history, ancient temples, and luxurious palaces. When the Crusaders first saw Constantinople, they were amazed by its beauty and splendor. The city was shining in the sun, its golden domes and towers softly reflecting its light, and the streets were filled with voices in different languages, filling the atmosphere of the city with a sense of unity and diversity. Soon the situation changed, and instead of peacefully moving on, the Crusaders began to besiege Constantinople, which became an unexpected target for them. The city was surrounded, and after long negotiations and skirmishes, it was captured. This event was unexpected for everyone, changing the course of the crusade and leaving a deep mark on history. The Crusaders entered Constantinople, gradually realizing the greatness and significance of this place, its ancient temples, palaces, and streets full of history and memories. Despite the complexity of the situation and the consequences, people were able to see and feel the amazing beauty and atmosphere of this city, which slowly and unhurriedly revealed its secrets and riches to them. The Fourth Crusade did not achieve its original goal and bring the Crusaders to Jerusalem, but it became an important historical event, gently and thoughtfully reminding people of the unpredictability of history, how plans and intentions can change under the influence of circumstances. Over time, the participants of the crusade began to return to their homes, bringing with them amazing memories of a journey filled with unexpected discoveries and important lessons. The Fourth Crusade went down in history as a reminder of the need for caution and wisdom in decision-making, of how important it is to treat the culture and traditions of other peoples with care, understanding their value and uniqueness. These memories continued to be passed down from generation to generation, gently and carefully, filling people's minds with wisdom and respect for history, allowing everyone to think about the importance of maintaining peace and good neighborly relations, appreciating diversity, and finding mutual understanding, even in the most difficult and unexpected situations. The last Ninth Crusade began in the second half of the 13th century, at a time when Europe had already quietly and calmly accepted these events as an integral part of its long history. By that time, people already knew a lot about distant lands, about travels and meetings with different peoples and cultures. But in the hearts of many, there was still a desire to help the shrines of the East, to preserve and strengthen what was so dear to previous generations. The last crusade was led by the English Prince Edward, the future King Edward I, a decisive, calm, and wise man who set out on a journey with a small army, understanding the complexity and seriousness of the road ahead. He moved slowly, thinking through each step, feeling responsible for his people and those who were waiting for his help. The path of the Crusaders again ran through familiar European lands, softly and carefully approaching the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. The people walked quietly, enjoying the beauty of nature and ancient cities, stopping to rest and have leisurely conversations, exchanging stories and memories of times gone by. Finally reaching the east, the Crusaders faced the usual difficulties, but they continued to move forward, striving to help those who needed their support. Prince Edward fought several important battles and negotiations, but soon realized that times had changed and the Crusades were gradually becoming a part of the past. Slowly and respectfully, he began to prepare for his return home, understanding that his mission was only partially accomplished, but all that was possible was done. The last crusade ended quietly, leaving behind memories that became part of the common memory of mankind. People returning home carried in their hearts respect and an understanding of the importance of peace, wisdom, and tolerance. Over time, these campaigns turned into legends, stories that were passed down from generation to generation, reminding us of the importance of respect and mutual understanding, of the value of maintaining peace and treating each other with care. Today, remembering these distant events, we can feel a quiet and deep respect for the past, for those people who once set out on a journey, led by dreams and hopes. Their stories live softly and carefully in the hearts of each of us, reminding us how important it is to preserve and appreciate the memory, history, and wisdom of past generations. Now, slowly completing this journey through the pages of history, you can feel part of the endless stream of time, gently flowing forward, carefully preserving the memories of people, events, and places that will always be close to our hearts. Let this story remain a quiet and warm reminder that history lives in each of us, and we, in turn, carefully pass it on to future generations. Thank you for being there on this journey along the roads of the past, and may each new day bring you quiet peace and a deep awareness of your connection with the history of mankind.